Hey everyone, GuardianE here, and welcome to our overview of the brand new Ignition system in Destiny Child. Ignition is essentially a way for you to limit break your maxed characters in the game with increased stats and fun and powerful enhanced skills to take them even further beyond. Now this is a late game veteran system that requires some heavy investment, so bear that in mind. And when I say this is a heavy investment system, what I mean is that you're essentially going to have to burn 17 5-stars in order to fully max ignite a unit. So here we are in Hephaestus Forge with Hephaestus herself up here looking absolutely gorgeous. Hephaestus Forge is unlocked and opened in the Night World, so you can access that right now, and this is where the magic happens. So to start things off, I do want to mention that currently only water units and the newly released Banshee can use the Ignition system. It is currently limited to those units. They will be adding more to the mix with later updates, but that is the current limitation. Furthermore, you can only use Ignition on a unit that is a 6-star, level 60 with max awakening. Uncaps do not matter. You can be at +6 or you can be at +0. Uncaps don't matter at all. Either way works perfectly fine. So to start things off, let's go over the different sections of Hephaestus Forge up front. So let's start with the Create Core option. You're going to be using these cores, these Ignition cores, in order to actually invoke and go through the Ignition process. So Create Core, Ignition Core Creation is where we're going to go first, and at the top you can see there are 4 different variations of core materials, each corresponding to a different stat. So you have Amplified Attack, Amplified Defense, Amplified Agility, and Amplified Crit. What this essentially does is it creates the first stat boost of the core that you create. And then when you have 99 of these core materials, you can use 99. As you can see down here at the bottom, I have 2 out of 99 there. You need 99 core materials. Why it's 99 and not 100, I have no idea, but that's what they decided to go with. So you need 99 of those and 1 5-star child to use on the right side. You have to consume both of those in order to create one core, one Ignition core. So it's relatively expensive. You got to burn a 5-star and you got to get 99 of these core materials and then go through that process of spending 150 coins in the process as well to get that core. But that's essentially how you create these cores. And again, choosing the corresponding stat line for the core materials will produce a different core. You can actually purchase the core materials as well. Obviously, we'll have to see how farmable these core materials are, how often they're in certain mission passes and things like that, so that they're readily available. Obviously, for the anniversary, we're getting a bunch of them, so you can create a bunch of cores yourself. But at the end of the day, if you really needed to, you could always purchase the cores that you need with crystals. So it looks like it's about 5,000 crystals for one core, which honestly isn't really that bad. If you're with the rate that we get crystals in the game, if you wanted to spend 5,000 crystals to get one core plus to use up a 5-star and 5,000 crystals, that's actually not that terrible, especially when you're some of the stat lines and the enhanced skills that you're getting with Ignition with certain units. It may actually be worth doing that. But that aside, you're going to spend the 99, you're going to spend the child, and if you click on that, you can choose any of the available unlocked 5-star childs that you have, and then you can go ahead and go through the process of creating the core. So I'm going to cut to a previous recording right now where I actually created my first core so you can see how that actually looks. So as you can see here, I have 100 out of 99 needed Amplify Attack core materials. And then over here, I can pick one of the native 5-star childs that I have in excess. As you can see here, I've been hoarding 5-stars because I knew Ignition was coming. I know their House of Reincarnation limited units are around, so you always want to hold on to native 5-stars. But for the sake of this, let's just pick one of these, and as soon as you pick one, and as you can see here, the center lights up, I can create an Amplify Attack core. And I can spend 150,000 gold to do that. I can swap it to a defense core, an agility core, a crit core, right? So you can pick any of them, and again, you just need to pick a native 5-star in order to accomplish this. So I'm just going to go through with this because I want to create an attack core anyway. So let's just go ahead and run through it. I'll use the 150,000 coins here. And the selected child will disappear, so the fodder that you use, the 5-star, will disappear as soon as you use it. There's no getting that back, so make sure to pick a dupe. Hit yes, and then here we go. So now you go through the forge process, and as I understand it, there is an RNG element to this, because you get additional effects in addition to the Amplify Attack, and you have a % chance of getting different things. So as you can see here, Amplify Attack Ignition Core, it contains 3 types of stats. So Amplified Attack is guaranteed because I picked the attack core. Then I got additional attack, and then I got additional agility. So that's all right, I guess. There's a number of different options that are available. I might put that up on screen so you can see what the rates are, because that was part of the moot update from Destiny Child. But basically, there's also like an amplified percent chance, and then there's also crit and everything else. But we got our attack core. So as you can see, I used 99 of my core materials to create that attack core. So next we'll just talk about the storage. The storage is just where all of the ignition materials are, the cores and the core materials as well. Don't know why it needed its own backpack, but here it is, so it's now all nice and neat in here. I guess the nice thing is that it doesn't take up space in your inventory, which is actually pretty huge, because inventory management is a huge pain, so anything that avoids you having to clutter up your own inventory with these is a good thing in my book. And on the right side we have Change Core, Ignition Core Overriding. So you'll notice it says overriding, it doesn't say swap. When you have an ignition core installed on a unit, and it is the first ignition core, it is like the central primary ignition core on them, you can actually override it, meaning you can put in a new ignition core that destroys the old ignition core and takes its place. And all of the upgrades that you've done to the Queepath tree and everything else, that all stays in accordance with the new core that you put in, and you lose the old core. So don't be too scared about, I guess, experimenting with putting in a core that you might end up replacing later. The biggest burden to that, or the biggest disadvantage to that, is that you lose the old core. So that does suck, but at the same time, you're not ruining a character, I should say, by installing a core, because you can actually override that core later if you get a better core to put in there. Alright, so we have Water Mouthed It here, and you can see on the right-hand side at the bottom, there is an ignition option. So that if for units that don't have ignition available, you won't see that option there. But for those that do, you can click on that. And naturally, as you can see, I have Mouthed It at a 6-star and level 60 with Max Awakening. So that is why she is able to go through this. So here is the ignition tree that we were talking about. So up top here is going to be the ignition core that you choose. So this is what I was talking about, where you can install it here, and if you need to replace it later, you can. It'll destroy the original core that's there. And once you install the core, it'll open up all of these options that are available down here based upon the RNG skills that you were able to procure through the creation of the initial core. So as you can see, it is pretty expensive. You're going to need those ignition cores, and not only are you going to need those ignition cores, you're going to need a lot of 5-star fodder to actually max ignition one of your units. And when you get all the way down to the bottom, you get one of the really valuable prize skills, and for Mouthed It in particular, she actually gets a 6-hit slide. So her slide attacks 6 times, which is phenomenal. That's absolutely amazing. So again, because of that, you're going to want to prioritize, especially for a newer player. Another really popular choice that I was talking about earlier with the Lisa's extra lessons is Chang'e. Chang'e, if we take a look here and go all the way down her tree, her max ignition skill is that she ends up providing the speed buff to 3 allies versus 2 allies. She was already very strong with enhancing 2 allies. Giving her the ability to enhance a 3rd ally just makes her that much more potent, makes your overall team that much more strong. So Chang'e is definitely an excellent choice if you don't have a specific preference or a game plan in mind, but just bear in mind that they're going to be adding more units to the ignition. So if you don't have like a game plan in mind, I would just wait. What I would say is, because of the potentially limited nature of the resources, especially if you're a newer player, it's not a bad idea just to hold on to your cores and your core materials. They're going to be adding more units to the ignition, and we don't know, you never know. You never know what path they're going to take with the ignition and who they're going to add to it. So you may just want to hold off and see what comes down the pipeline if nothing specifically interests you with the available units. But I will say, I think Chang'e is probably a top runner that a lot of people would recommend. I think that Mouthed It, of course, is also incredible as an attacker. And for the sake of the video, I think we're just going to use the first core that we got on Water Mouthed It, because it's Water Mouthed It. Mouthed It is, one of my favorite units in the game. So let's go ahead and just use this core. I'm going to hit Ignition Core Equipment. Equipping an Ignition Core will unlock the first Kleepa. The child is enhanced every time you unlock a Kleepa. Right. Amplified Attack plus 150, level 1. Equipped Ignition Cores cannot be recovered. Right, because you can overwrite them, but you can't recover them once they are installed. So let's equip it. And there we go. So we've unlocked the path. Let's see. ignition level up, unlock path, amplified stat up, amplified attack, turn the stars to red. Tip, by equipping the ignition core on the first Kleepa, the Kleepoth has been unlocked. Every time you unlock a Kleepa, the child's ignition level goes up by 1. The ignition level can be raised from 1 to 12. The color of the child's star changes as you raise the level. Right, we just kind of covered that stuff. Every time you unlock Kleepa on the central branch, the amplified stat and skills are enhanced. The ignition core equipped on the first Kleepa determines the amplified stats you receive, just like we talked about. The skills that get enhanced are fixed for each child. So yeah, the skill enhancements are based on the child that you're upgrading. The stat enhancements are based upon the initial ignition core that you pick. Stats are enhanced every time you unlock the Kleepa on the lateral branches. So those are the stats are on the left and the right-hand side. The skills are on the central path. The ignition core equipped on the first Kleepa determines the stats you receive, right? It's possible to freely override the first ignition cores at the Forge of Hephaestus in the Night World. When you override an ignition core, the stat on any unlocked Kleepa changes as well. So again, once you swap or overwrite, all of the stats and everything then swaps automatically. So you don't have to worry about losing upgrades or things like that. When you override an ignition core, the previous one becomes destroyed and unusable. So as you can see, we've equipped the ignition core on Mofdid. So this acts as your primary ignition core. This is the ignition core that dictates what the other stat branches are going to be. If you click on any of these top 3 symbols up here, you can see how it works. It says core status, and you can see right down on the left and the right side, there's attack and agility, the 2 bonus stats that the core that I originally put in had. So that primary core gives amplified attack, attack on the left side, and agility on the right side. If I were to override the primary core with another core, these core statuses would change accordingly. So let's say I created a new attack core that I wanted to install on Mofdid as the primary core, right? Let's say it had amplified attack, and crit. Well, then if I installed that and overrode the current core that's in there, it would destroy this core. And then instead what would read on this core status screen is amplified attack in the center. You would have attack on the left side and then crit on the right side instead of agility. So any upgrades to the pathing that I do will actually be retroactively changed if I change the initial ignition core. So the initial ignition core is really all that matters as far as your stat bonuses and everything else. In order to upgrade each of these paths and go down all the way to the bottom, you need additional ignition cores. When you burn those ignition cores, it doesn't matter what the stat line is of those ignition cores or whatever RNG choices it gave you or anything like that. So you just need ignition cores as currency to burn here. And you don't get any bonuses, at least as far as I can tell. It's essentially just currency that gets burned and has no effect on the actual unit. So you just want to pick basically one of the, if you roll a terrible set of bonus stat lines to a core, then those are the ones you want to use to be burning as you're upgrading the entire ignition tree. And then as you can see here, it also requires you to use a 5-star base child of the same element of the unit itself. So I have Water Mofdid here that I am using for ignition. I need a 5-star or higher native water unit to burn as well. So that's why I said that you need like 17 native 5-stars, is because you need 5 stars to create the ignition cores, and you need 5 stars to actually upgrade the different modules in the tree, the different nodes. Now, only the actual center path here requires additional 5-star childs to burn. The ones on the left and the right only require additional cores. But again, cores aren't cheap either. You have to burn a 5-star for a core, so it's pretty expensive overall. But the benefits that you get are pretty significant. So the takeaway, I think, ultimately is that it's extremely heavy investment. If you really like a character, or if there's a particular character that is exceptionally strong as an ignition unit, then it might be worth going in and burning all of these 5 stars and resources for that unit. It does make significant strides in improving these units too. But at the same time, you just want to be wary and conserve, because quite frankly, right now, there's a limited pool of units that can use ignition. They're going to add more to it. If you're hesitant at all about what units you want to improve via the ignition process, maybe just wait. Just hold on to your resources and wait for certain other units to get added into the pool. Because you never know, that one of them might be one that you really want to invest in, and you don't want to have already burned all of your 5 stars and all of your cores on another unit that you didn't really care for. So just bear that in mind, the system is just starting, so if you don't want to dive in head first, you don't have to dive in head first. Just hold on to the materials that you get, wait for a good opportunity or a later update to a unit that you really like, and then invest in that one. But I would say that up front, Chang'e and Maftit are great choices. If you do like those characters, Chang'e in particular, I think a lot of people suggest is kind of future-proofed, at least in terms of her utility. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's your units, your resources, it's your account. Do what you think is right. Alright, so that is going to wrap up my coverage of the 2nd anniversary celebration for the global version of Destiny Child. Hopefully you all found it somewhat helpful as far as, again, these are just guides and recommendations. You know, they're not gospel, so if you disagree, let me know in the comments below, or if you went with a different direction, that's totally okay with your Lisa's extra lessons, or with the Ignition, or anything in between. But let me know in the comments below what you think of the celebration, who you ended up choosing for your Lisa's extra lessons, and if you decided to go through with the Ignition process, who you ended up picking for your first Ignition unit. Hopefully you all enjoyed the video. If you did, please feel free to leave us a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more Destiny Child content. We thank you all so much for watching and for taking time out of your day to spend with us. We really, really do appreciate it. Certainly hoping you're all staying safe, healthy, secure, and united out there, and wishing the very, very best for you, your family, and your friends. And until next time, let's keep on slacking.